Hey, everybody. My name is Matt. I am from Pinata. We are an IPFS pinning service, an infrastructure hosting platform. Basically, our goal is to make working with IPFS as easy as possible. However, this talk's not going to really be about our platform itself, rather something we've been kind of thinking about lately, and kind of a new paradigm for architecting websites and services today. So we call this multi-cloud resiliency with IPFS. So many modern companies rely on cloud providers to store and serve their content. And it's becoming a problem. So for example, let's take Pinterest. In their S1, they pointed out their reliance on AWS, where they said, in quote, "Any significant disruption of limitation of our access to or other interference of our use with AWS would negatively impact our operations and our business could be harmed." That's pretty important for them to actually list in their S1. We have a lot of cloud providers. So we have DigitalOcean, Google Cloud, AWS, Azure. While these cloud providers make storage easy, they also present a large dependency risk to companies that rely on them. So does anybody remember this back in 2017 when roughly a third of the internet went down and nobody had any idea why? It wasn't until hours later that anybody knew what had happened, and the cause was one typo. AWS engineers were tweaking something in their billing system, and they made a typo that accidentally took down core machines that S3 relied on. The result was that S3 ground to a halt and much of the internet with it. This is how fragile most of our internet currently is, and one small typo by a company you rely on, and your entire product goes down with it. So what can we do here? We call this the multi-cloud approach, and it's something we're actively working on at Pinata. So in a multi-cloud system, our application would be able to pull data from one of many cloud providers that are serving the content. I show these providers as you're probably familiar with their names, but if you're hosting your own service somewhere, you can really host on that or any other cloud provider that you choose. It could be one in your hometown or one in the state next door or one in your house. It really does not matter. So if AWS happens to go down again, your decentralized application can still continue to operate and pull data. There's only just one slight problem here. This is really hard to code. In a multi-cloud system we just described, the application layer is going to have code that handles connections to each of those cloud providers, as well as code that knows how to retrieve content from each of these providers. At best, you've about tripled your code base in regards to how you manage these connections, and at worst, there's a lot more complexity there. So basically what I'm saying is that no sane engineer would want to write or maintain this. So how can we make things easier? IPFS. So for those of you that don't know, IPFS is a distributed content addressable file system. What does content addressable storage mean? So when you upload data to IPFS or store data on IPFS, IPFS provides you back with a unique hash. And then if you ever want to retrieve data back from the IPFS network, you provide that same hash that was initially provided back, and you're guaranteed to get back the data that was initially uploaded in the first place. And you can do this from any node that's connected to the IPFS network. So how does this help our multi-cloud situation? So with IPFS, we can still utilize the modern cloud providers that people rely on, or local hosting providers in your area that you trust, or one that you're running yourself. To start, we simply deploy an IPFS node to each provider and make sure that our content resides on it. There's multiple avenues of doing this. A great one is called IPFS Cluster. It's also an open source project made by Protocol Labs, who makes IPFS. So then once we do this in our application layer, the application simply runs an IPFS instance that maintains a connection to each of these other nodes on startup. When content's requested, instead of having to write complicated code to intelligently pull from the rest of the providers, we simply tell our IPFS client, find me this content, and IPFS handles the rest. So if AWS goes down again, our application is happily still pulling content that are from providers that are still online. Thanks for listening.